Hi, welcome back to the shed for episode 7 of the Stratocaster build, and in this episode we're going to take a few more steps towards getting the neck completed by making a start on the fretboard. So last time we got quite a lot of work done on the neck. We thicknessed the blank, installed the truss rod, cut the neck to shape on the bandsaw and then profiled it on the router. The only job we've got left to do on this for the time being is to just trim down these areas at the heel where it goes into the neck pocket. But I don't want to do that right now because I want to tackle another couple of chunks of the neck making process. And if you don't know what I mean by that, refer to last week's video where I kind of explained that in great detail. Because next I want to start work on the fingerboard, and in this episode what I hope to get done is to get the initial fret slots cut and get the radius put onto the board. Now, unlike pretty much every other guitar I've ever made, I'm not using a 12-inch radius on this one. I'm going to go with a 9.5, which is the radius on my other Strats, and I quite like that. The difficulty that causes is I don't think I've got a 9.5-inch sanding block. I'm not sure. I have got a big homemade one. I'm pretty sure it's 12, but I don't know. It might not be. But we can check that out in a bit. If we haven't got a sanding block, it's not a problem. I can put the radius in with a plane. Shouldn't be an issue at all. So to get started, we'll get the fret slotting jig out and we'll get this templated up. I've just quickly checked with the radius gauge, and this behemoth of a sanding block actually is 9.5-inch radius. So we have got a sanding block after all. I'll need to get it cleaned off and get some fresh paper onto it, but that will make things a little bit easier. Fortunately, it won't fit into the jig that I use with my other sanding blocks, but we'll just have to improvise something. I'm sure it'll be fine. So we'll get this set up and get some fret slots cut. And set this up, I've just put some tape onto the scale template, a bit of tape on the back, and I've also put a line on the tape, and there's a center line on the board, and I'm literally just going to align those two. Bit of super glue to hold it all together, stick it in place. It's made slightly more awkward by the fact that this board tapers a little bit. If they're square, it's much easier, but we haven't got that luxury on this occasion, unfortunately. So I'm just going to get some super glue on there. That's way too much super glue. There we go. And then we can get this into the slotting jig and start cutting. Now, if any of you haven't seen this before, there's a tiny little pin just in there, in this slotting jig, and there's notches on these templates where the cuts need to be, and it's simply a case of aligning them onto those notches, cut your slot, move to the next one, cut the slot, rinse and repeat until you've done them all. And the key to this job is to just take your time, just make sure that everything's set up properly before each cut. Make sure that the notch is on the little pin and that the template is pushed all the way up against the fence in the jig. I also put a clamp on just to hold it in place, and as I work my way down the board I will shift this clamp from one end to the other, because all the movement will start to go from this end to that end. I'm not quite there though. And I think for the last 3 at least fretboards that I've cut, I've been saying that I need to sharpen this saw, and on each occasion I've failed to do so. So I'm making my life a lot harder than it should be. I promise I will fix that up for the next one. And if you're wondering about this fret slotting jig, it's actually something I made to build my first guitar neck with. So this goes all the way back to Telecaster #1, and I honestly believe I spent way more time on that building templates and jigs than I did the actual guitar, but they've stood me in good stead, and I've been using this one ever since. It works absolutely fine. I see no reason at all to upgrade it. And we've had what I think is going to be the last delivery for this build turn up this morning. It's the pickups and, of course, Tome Rider. And this is their Classic Blues set for all Stratocasters. Now these are their kind of highest output vintage voiced Stratocaster pickups. And I've gone again for Tome Rider simply because they offer really, really nice pickups for a great price. This set was a little under £80. However, if they're anything like all of the other Tome Rider pickups I've used, they will be great. And the build quality is always really, really good. So I'll just drop these out of the packaging. You can see they've got the vintage style cloth covered wire on. They've got these nicely engraved base plates. And what I particularly like is they've got the staggered pole pieces, and they've also got like the chamfered top of the pole piece, which I just think is a really, really nice looking finishing touch. Those are the pickup covers that came as standard with these. However, I'm not going to be using them. If I can keep them in, they're the white ones. I've got a set of parchment ones which match the pick guard quite nicely. If anything, they might be a little bit light for my liking, so it might be a case of we see if we can do something to make them look a little bit darker, a little bit yellowed perhaps. I've got a new switch tip, and as you can see, that is a little bit more kind of ivory / cream coloured, and I think that's the colour I would like for these pickup covers. So if anyone's got any suggestions, maybe soaking them in tea or something, just to give them a little bit of a different colour to the rest of the pick guard, I think that would be a good thing. But of course, now I've got the pickups, I can actually get them installed into the pickguard, and we can do 95% of the wiring for this off the body, and it will just leave the 2 wires that run out to the output jack to be wired in at assembly time. And in terms of these pickups, I said they're the kind of highest rated or highest output vintage voice pickups, so I'm just actually going to get a multimeter on them and just check what the outputs are. So this is the bridge pickup, and that's measuring at 7.07, 7.06. For me, that's the important one, because this guitar will spend 90% of its life in the bridge position. And the other 10% of the time it's probably in the second position, adding in the middle pickup, which is 648, and then neck pickup comes in at 623. So not wildly high output, but hopefully high enough output to give me some nice rocky bluesy tones. And I especially like you get a free sticker. I like anything free. And there are all of those slots cut. It took a bit of time. This rosewood is actually quite hard, so it took a bit of cutting with my blunt saw, but we've got there. And if I just kind of offer up this fretboard template somewhere like on the center line, align the nut slot, and everything is absolutely spot on. That all lines up beautifully. So very happy with that. So I'll get this jig out of the way, we'll get this off the template, and then it's time to get it fastened down onto the bench and break out a plane and start getting this radius in. Okay, so that's fastened down nicely, and I've got a nice sharp hand plane. This is a number 3, and all I'm going to do is just working on alternate sides. Just going to start taking some of that material out. And I'm trying really hard to keep parallel to the center line with my plane. It's difficult because this board is tapered, but if I was to go in and follow that angle, I'd put a compound radius on the board, and that isn't what I want in this instance. Significant amount to remove still. actually think I am pretty close now with that. That's quite a lot of planing, but we're almost there with it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take this white pencil and put some marks all over this, like that. And then I'm going to take Big Bertha and I'm just going to start sanding on this. I'm trying to keep this straight, but as I work that radius on, it will naturally kind of pull it straight. I'm just going to continue sanding until we take off all of that white. And as you can see, because I was quite close, it's actually going very quickly. And there it is, done. That's come up absolutely beautifully. Very, very happy with that. But what you might notice is it's taken out quite a lot of the fret slotting. So next up is get my breath back. We'll get a big piece of wood into the vise so we can raise this off the bench a little bit, and we'll just use the saw to reinstate those fret slots. And all I've done here is I've set the depth stop on this saw to the depth of the fret tang that I'm going to be using. So I'm just going to reinstate the slots and take them down to the correct depth. So I'm going to work my way up the rest of this fretboard now. I'm going to do that off camera because realistically it's just my eternal struggle with a dull saw, so you don't really want to see that. And that makes an ideal point for us to leave this video. So I'll be back with a fully slotted board in a couple of days time, and we can pick this up, look at putting some fret markers in, look at getting this cut to shape and positioned onto the neck. Until then, don't forget to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you then. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.